Hi, everyone. I just wanted to start by thanking the Cosmetic Physicians College of Australasia for including me in the conference program this year. I am really grateful that I can present on the topic of menopausal skin because it's relevant to a significant and growing percentage of our patients in this aesthetic setting. And by understanding what's happening beneath the surface, it becomes clear that a more holistic approach is needed in order to really make a difference to outcomes for this patient demographic. So that will be the focus of my presentation today. My disclosure is that I have a financial interest in Bio-Alai. Bio-Alai is a company that I started and founded, and we offer nutraceutical products and personalized nutrition plans and education to help practitioners provide a more holistic model of care. I won't be talking about that today, though. What I will talk about are the causes and consequences of inflammation, because inflammation is what really underlies many of the symptoms that women experience during peri and postmenopause, and that includes the skin changes that we see. But what I'll be doing for this presentation is I'll be focusing on the molecular processes which are known as the hallmarks of aging, because these are processes that are present often well before middle age, but in women, they're generally not revealed until the protective effects of estrogen have been removed from the equation. So I'll look at how these mechanisms contribute to skin changes during menopause and why optimizing diet and lifestyle can really help reduce the impact of estrogen deficiency. So this is one of the best examples of how diet can influence the rate of aging. These are rhesus monkeys, which are our closest relatives, and both of these monkeys are the same age. Oops, going back to that, both of these monkeys are the same age, but the one on the right was on a lifelong calorie restricted diet, and there are clear differences, as you can see here, in their appearance. The one on the left is significantly more frail. Spinal changes have occurred, so you can see that, whereas the one on the right has a lot more fur, looks a lot more stronger, almost fierce. But there were, in addition to these external appearances differences, there were also differences in health parameters. And this is because of the beneficial effects that calorie restriction has on key processes that are involved in longevity. But the problem is, because calorie restriction is so difficult to follow long-term, research is looking at compounds and dietary techniques that mimic calorie restriction. And so we can use this understanding to help support our patients as well. So these are some of the aesthetic presentations that are commonly exacerbated in perimenopause, but there are also signs of underlying pathologies like dysbiosis, inflammation, and insulin resistance. And these tend to stem from a Western diet and lifestyle. So by the time a woman reaches middle age, about half have been diagnosed with a chronic condition, and almost all chronic conditions, have an inflammatory process at their foundation. And all of these conditions can present with aesthetic signs and symptoms, but sometimes it's not until estrogen declines that the inflammatory process is revealed within the skin. The reason why that's the case is because estrogen is an anti-inflammatory molecule. It inhibits the inflammasome, and alongside progesterone, it regulates the function of immune cells to produce an anti-inflammatory state in the body. So when estrogen and progesterone decline or they become imbalanced during perimenopause, the immune system is shifted towards a pro-inflammatory state, which is present in all organs and systems in the body. And this is the reason why during perimenopause, when women can present with systems that stem from multiple systems simultaneously. When it comes to skin aging, there is an increase in oxidative stress within the skin during middle age, which is more pronounced in women as estrogen declines. And this oxidative stress really overwhelms our endogenous antioxidant system. And this then goes on to cause DNA damage as well, which is one of the hallmarks of aging. And this correlates with a reduction in NAD, which is a repair molecule. It's possibly one of the most important metabolites in the body because it's so central to cell function. So NAD serves a number of roles, one of which is supporting mitochondrial function, which is essential for energy production. So the cells have energy to perform the roles that they're designed for. It also supports metabolism. It's involved in circadian rhythm signaling. So it helps cells perform certain functions at certain times in a 24-hour cycle. It reduces oxidative stress and down regulates inflammatory responses. And it also helps support the epigenome, which regulates gene expression. And it's essential for DNA repair. So this is why it's gained a lot of interest in longevity research. And a decline in NAD has been linked to the hallmarks of aging, which are degenerative processes that are interconnected. So they're all interconnected and they're synonymous with aging, but aging begins at around the age of 25. So these hallmarks aren't exclusively found in the elderly, and some of them, like mitochondrial dysfunction and epigenetic changes, can begin as soon as our cells start to divide. And then there are others like dysbiosis, inflammation, and impaired nutrient sensing that can begin as soon as we're introduced to processed foods. So for some, that's baby formula. And then over time, damage accumulates within the cells and starts to impair cell function and impair communication between cells. And then autophagy also becomes impaired. So our ability to recycle cellular debris is reduced. And this leads to a buildup of oxidative stress that goes on to damage DNA and cellular components. And it also shortens telomeres. And telomeres are the caps on the ends of our chromosomes that determine how many cell cycles are left. So you want to keep them long. And then eventually what happens is the cell can either become senescent, and I'll talk about that in a couple of slides, and then stem cells are exhausted. So these are the hallmarks of aging. But the reason why NAD declines is because it's being used up in the repair processes that it supports. So the more damage we have, the less NAD we have. And there's about a 50% reduction in NAD by the age of 60, by the time we reach 60. And this correlates with mitochondrial dysfunction, which is a hallmark of aging. But mitochondrial dysfunction also occurs with many common chronic conditions. And some of these conditions, like obesity and insulin resistance, can occur as early as childhood. Mitochondrial dysfunction is actually the underlying process that's responsible for the symptom of fatigue. So it's very closely linked to post-viral syndromes or adrenal dysfunction and chronic fatigue syndromes as well. So the decline in NAD also correlates with increasing inflammation, because NAD is broken down by an enzyme called CD38, which is found on the surface of inflammatory cells. And this enzyme increases with age, but it also increases with many common chronic conditions, again, some of which can begin as early as childhood. So this is why there's such a large variability in the rate of aging between individuals. And what's been found in lab studies is that endotoxin is the most potent activator of CD38. So it breaks down NAD. Now, endotoxin is released from pathogenic gut bacteria, and it's a highly pro-inflammatory molecule that's been linked to systemic chronic low-grade inflammation and almost every chronic condition that we know of. So reducing inflammation is really the key to supporting NAD levels and delaying the hallmarks of aging as well. And if we look at the factors that contribute to chronic inflammation, almost all of them are modifiable, and all of them mediate their inflammatory effect through their impact on the gut microbiome, which then goes on to have significant effects on systemic immune function. And diet is by far the greatest contributor to inflammation, because we eat every couple of hours, and what we eat will modify the microbiome and it will interact with our epigenome. And this goes on to influence gene expression and the health of every organ in our body. And so I'd say that this is probably the most significant discovery that we've had in the last 2 decades, because it provides a framework for addressing the true causes of accelerated aging and illness. So dietary modification is really the first factor that needs to be addressed, but stress management is equally as important, because stress not only contributes to dysbiosis and inflammation, but it has many other pathways through which it can accelerate aging, and it's relevant in the peri and postmenopausal patient. So I'll just touch on that. So one of its greatest impacts is on hormonal balance. So chronic stress reduces estrogen, testosterone, and thyroid hormone levels, which are hormones that support immune function, metabolism, skin, and brain health. And their disruption is linked to a number of aesthetic presentations like weight gain, hair loss, and skin aging. And if we just take a closer look at the effect of stress on skin aging, this provides a really good summary of the mechanisms through which it changes skin quality. Firstly, it activates matrix metalloproteinases, it increases free radicals and damages DNA and shortens telomeres. And this is combined with a depletion of the repair mechanisms that I spoke about, like NAD, and also our other endogenous antioxidant systems that would normally repair the damage. So this is how stress and inflammation can lead to cellular senescence within the skin, and then that goes on to have an impact on skin aging as well. And really, the ultimate consequence of low-grade chronic inflammation, which stems from any cause, is cellular senescence. These are cells that are damaged, but they don't undergo apoptosis, which would be a better option. But instead, these cells remain alive, but they don't function. They just secrete inflammatory cytokines that damage surrounding cells, and they can turn surrounding cells into senescent cells. And this is when this occurs in the skin. It actually occurs in all organs, and it can occur in different organs at different rates. But when it occurs in the skin, it's what causes or contributes to skin aging. But these cells have also been found in conditions like acne, eczema, and psoriasis, which we know can occur at any age, and they can contribute to premature senescence within the skin. And something that is interesting, or I found interesting anyway, is that the inflammatory signals from senescent cells within the skin can communicate with other organs like the gut and the brain. And so that basically adds another layer of complexity to it, with these senescent signals contributing to dysbiosis and increased permeability of the gut wall, which results in more inflammation, both at the level of the gut and systemically. And systemically, this can change metabolic and neuroendocrine signals. And all of these signals are transmitted to the skin and the brain through the gut-brain-skin axis. So it becomes this self-perpetuating cycle of inflammation. And almost every aesthetic condition can be related to changes in the gut-brain-skin axis. And I talk about these in my other two presentations. And I do go into a lot more detail on the conditions themselves and the role that estrogen deficiency plays in these pathways. So research is looking for compounds that can boost NAD and pharmaceuticals that activate autophagy and remove senescent cells. And the research is certainly looking promising for some of these compounds and pharmaceuticals, but there are risks with each of these, and there are no protocols, and they would be considered off-label. So in our setting, in a cosmetic setting, it wouldn't really be appropriate or necessarily safe to recommend these to your patients unless you really know what you're doing with these compounds. But there are some safe strategies that have been found in the research to boost NAD levels, and these include really simple tools like exercise, intermittent fasting, maintaining a healthy diet to reduce inflammation, and nicotinamide. It's also been found to increase NAD levels. So there's been a lot of popularity in NAD boosters, and we hear about them all the time, but to date, they haven't really been found to be more effective than just basic nicotinamide or vitamin B3 at a dose of around 100 to 200 milligrams a day. So that's something that you can safely recommend to patients. And then also certain polyphenols have been found to reduce inflammation and inhibit CD38, so the enzyme that breaks down NAD. So polyphenols can prevent that breakdown. But it's important to understand that it's not just about boosting NAD, it's about supporting cell function, because there are a number of cell functions that are essential for that cell in order to be able to do exactly what it's designed for. Our cells require a number of vitamins and minerals, for example, for mitochondrial function, just to be able to perform their role they're designed for. So supplementation might be something to consider for your middle-aged patients as well. And this is just to give you an idea of how many nutrients the mitochondria need. in order to provide ourselves with energy. So the red arrow here shows where NAD fits into the mitochondrial chain. Mitochondria convert macronutrients into ATP, which forms energy for the cell to perform its function. And in the process, they also produce free radicals that need to be neutralized. These free radicals can activate autophagy. So there's a balance that needs to be maintained between ATP production and the free radicals. And in order to do that, there are all of these nutrients that we need in order, and these form cofactors, and they also scavenge these free radicals. And this is what helps mitochondria to keep the cell functioning well. And these are some of the other metabolic pathways that rely on nutrients. I mean, we need them to survive. And while the body can synthesize certain vitamins to a small degree, actually, we largely depend on diet or supplementation to meet our nutrient needs, particularly as we age or with chronic conditions or with chronic stress. Our nutrients needs increase. And if they're not being met, then cell function declines and aging is accelerated. So this is why supplementation almost becomes essential in that peri and postmenopausal patient. Another important nutrient group are polyphenols, and these are plant compounds, and they're really proving to have a range of therapeutic benefits because of their potent anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects. And so even some polyphenols like quercetin and fucoidan, for example, they have been found to delay or reverse the hallmarks of aging, and some are actually undergoing human clinical trials for their ability to remove or revert senescent cells back to normal function. So there's some very interesting research underway. But as it stands, really optimizing diet and lifestyle are proving to be the most effective interventions to slow biological aging in humans. And when it comes to skin benefits, there was a good study with using 121 subjects who had psoriasis, and they followed them up for an 18-year period, and they found that the severity of psoriasis reduced during Ramadan, which is when they were fasting until dinner. And so intermittent fasting has gained a lot of popularity, but it's important to understand that a 1 meal a day diet in the long term will actually cause metabolic and hormonal issues in a middle-aged female. So a better recommendation would be an anti-inflammatory diet alongside a calorie restriction, about a 15% calorie restriction, or a 12 to 14 hour overnight fast. So this has been found to improve glycemic control, reduce oxidative stress and inflammation, and increase the expression of repair genes. And I think to see real skin benefits, there also need to be modifications made to the types of food that are consumed, because there is a clear link between certain food triggers and conditions like acne and rosacea. And I talk about this in more detail in one of my other presentations. So just to summarize, here are some safe and effective recommendations that you can make to help your peri and postmenopausal patients. These are just very basic recommendations, and there would be very few people with contraindications to these. But for those with more complex issue, and this is usually the case with middle-aged patients, then a personalized nutrition plan is really the best option, because everyone has a different inflammatory response to different food components and a different metabolic or hormonal response to different dietary interventions. So, and I talk more about this in the presentation on resistant fat. So while people may initially see some improvements with a one-size-fits-all approach, they almost always revert to baseline simply because everyone has different needs. So the key takeaways are that estrogen deficiency reveals an underlying inflammatory process that is driven by a Western diet and lifestyle and contributes to all chronic diseases. And there are some safe and effective strategies that can help slow the aging process and reduce the impact of estrogen deficiency during peri and post-menopause. So if you'd like to find out more about how you can incorporate nutrient therapies as an adjunct to your services in a way that is streamlined and safe and effective, you can visit our website, bioalai.com, register to become a provider, or just email me and I can give you some more information about it. Thank you.